Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a rapidly developing situation with some massive global implications. You've probably seen the recent headlines about a U.S. military helicopter going down in the Middle East. It's exactly the kind of breaking news that just immediately grabs your attention. But as we're going to unpack today using data straight from the source, that single, highly visible event, it's really just the tip of a massive geopolitical iceberg. So let's dive right in.
Here's the central mystery we're tracking right now. An American AH-64 Apache attack helicopter went down near the Strait of Hormuz. And what's really important here is that this marks the very first Apache lost in the current U.S.-Israeli war on Iran. But the big question is still totally unanswered. What actually brought it down? Were we looking at a formidable aircraft getting shot down by Iranian fire, or did it just suffer some sort of critical mechanical failure? Right now, both possibilities are firmly on the table. We're looking at this completely impartially, and since the incident is under strict investigation, the final cause is still a total mystery.
Now, while we wait for that investigation to wrap up, we do have some verifiable facts on the ground. U.S. President Donald Trump addressed the incident directly, stating, "The pilots are fine. We are going to issue a report tomorrow. It's absolutely crucial to highlight that the pilots flying the helicopter are safe. They've been rescued successfully. So while the hardware is lost, the human cost in this specific incident was thankfully averted. We're just objectively reporting these facts as the situation unfolds, waiting to see exactly what that official report reveals."
Now, what's really interesting to note here is why this specific piece of equipment was flying in that airspace in the very first place. The twin-engine Apache is, quite frankly, widely considered one of the most feared weapons in the U.S. arsenal. I mean, just look at the specs. It is literally armed to the teeth with Hellfire missiles, a 30mm chain gun, and highly advanced targeting systems. It's an absolute beast of an aircraft. And it's been a key part of Washington's war efforts to challenge Iran's effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz. These Apaches have been out there aggressively patrolling the waterway, tasked with hunting drones, deterring Iranian fastboat attacks, and providing essential cover for American naval ops.
But those critical missions have recently taken the U.S. helicopters much closer to Iranian-controlled islands and coastal positions. And Iran, well, they've been very vocal in opposing these U.S. deployments near their waters. In fact, they issued a pretty stark warning, stating that in the event of continued acts of hostility, the United States and Israel will be dealt with even more forcefully. So what we're looking at is a clear, measurable escalation of tension in this very narrow, very crowded airspace.
Which brings us to America's mounting aircraft losses. To see how this single crash builds into a much broader picture, we really have to look at the hidden costs of this conflict for the United States. While the U.S. Department of War has disclosed only limited details to the public, a recent report by U.S. Congressional Research actually pulls back the curtain, suggesting the scale of losses is far, far greater than many expected. Just look at this number, 42. At least 42 U.S. aircraft have been lost or damaged since the launch of the war in Iran. I want to just pause for a quick second and let the sheer magnitude of that statistic really sink in. We aren't talking about bullets or small transport vehicles here. We are talking about 42 highly advanced, incredibly expensive pieces of military aviation.
Let's methodically walk through this data because, honestly, this inventory is genuinely overwhelming when you break it all down. We're looking at a massive variety of multi-million-dollar equipment. On the fighter and attack side, there are 4 F-15E Strike Eagles, a state-of-the-art F-35A stealth fighter, and an A-10 Thunderbolt. Then you have the support and surveillance side of things, an E-3 surveillance plane, a combat rescue helicopter, 2 MC-30J special ops planes, and 7 KC-135 refueling aircraft. And finally, unmanned aerial vehicles took a huge hit, with a staggering 24 MQ-9 Reaper drones lost or damaged. The true gravity of this conflict's cost is totally laid bare when you look at this inventory. It's a massive hit to the operational fleet.
So, the crucial point is how this loss compares to the other side of the conflict, because perhaps the most surprising development isn't actually what the U.S. has lost, but what Iran may have retained. On one hand, we have the public assumption, which has been fueled by repeated claims, that after months of airstrikes, Iran's military capabilities have been thoroughly devastated. But on the flip side, classified intelligence assessments are painting a completely different reality.
And that leads us to Iran's resilient missile arsenal. Let's dig into those classified intelligence assessments, which were reported just last month. They provide this fascinating data-driven look at the adversary's actual strength on the ground. And frankly, it's a surprising picture of resilience that totally challenges the standard narrative of the war so far.
According to these assessments, despite months of continuous American bombing and literally billions of dollars in military expenditure, Iran amazingly still possesses around 70% of its pre-war missile stockpile. I mean, think about that, 70%. The core missile force appears to be far, far from eliminated.
And this brilliantly illustrates what makes that stockpile even more dangerous: how it's deployed. Roughly 75% of Iran's mobile missile launchers are believed to remain entirely operational. Because they're mobile, they're notoriously difficult to track and destroy, which makes this retained arsenal highly active and dangerous.
But here is the absolute most alarming strategic detail from the intelligence report. Iran is said to have actually regained access to 30 of its 33 missile sites positioned directly along the Strait of Hormuz. Think about the implications there. They haven't just survived, they have reoccupied the absolute most critical strategic choke point in the entire region. Now for the contested global waterway. This brings us to the macro view of why an isolated helicopter crash matters so much. For the U.S. military, the implications of Iran retaining these coastal missile sites are deeply serious. It essentially means that any future attempt by the United States to escort commercial shipping through the strait could still face an incredibly credible, highly active missile threat.
And I really want to connect this geopolitical struggle directly back to you, because this isn't just about military hardware, it's about global economics. Why does this specific stretch of water matter so much to us? Well, because nearly 1/5 of the entire world's oil trade normally passes through this narrow, highly contested strait. The flow of global energy literally relies on this waterway being secure, and right now, as the data clearly shows, it is anything but secure.
So we have to conclude our main analysis with this incredibly provocative question. While an Apache helicopter lying in the waters near Hormuz might be the most visible symbol of the war's cost right now, the biggest story is this stark contrast. After months of bombing, billions of dollars spent, and 42 U.S. aircraft lost or damaged, Iran's core missile force remains largely intact. The waterway remains just as contested today as it was on the very first day this conflict began. So who really controls the Strait of Hormuz? It's a question that definitely leaves us eager to keep exploring this topic as the intelligence develops.
Now, before we completely wrap up this explainer, I have to share a quick, kind of eccentric moment from our source material today. The original reporter, a guy named Ozzy, went on this completely unexpected, hilarious tangent right at the end of his incredibly serious military breakdown. He pointed out that saying chai tea is like saying ATM machine, or delicious British food. I mean, chai literally means tea, so you're just saying TT. Just a little tension breaker after all that heavy data, right? But jokes aside, that heavy data leaves us with our final looming reality. If 42 lost aircraft can't secure the world's most vital waterway, what happens next? Thank you so much for joining me to unpack this today. And keep your eyes open. There's always more to learn.